Well, I want to take us one step further and talk about the things that you might only find in serious luxury properties that would be totally different. And the first thing that comes to mind is wine storage,
Yeah.
right? Because your general inspector is not going to have any idea about that, both temperature and all that. Who do you go to for something like that?
Well, I mean, the same people who install wine cellars in our market are the same folks you'd want to have evaluate an existing wine cellar in our market. So that's who we would go to. And you're right, depending on some people call it a wine cellar. It's nothing more than a drywall room in the basement, with some pretty shelving and wine. That's not really a wine cellar, but if they've got conditioned and humidified space, that they control usually with split systems, that sort of thing. That all needs to be evaluated. And you're right. That oftentimes is beyond the scope of a general home inspector.
Yeah.
That's
And and the same would go for whole home automation,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
There's not a third party vendor that would come inspect. You have to rely on the companies that install. But think about that when we talk about major financial consequences if there is something that is wrong, right? Let's say that you've got a luxury home that was built 10 years ago with a whole home automation system, and that technology is completely out of date, right? The
Right.
buyer would absolutely need to know what kind of investment they were going to need to make in order to have that system um, in working order now.
Well, and part of the problem is with technology is that some companies completely go out of business so that they don't exist any longer. And you want to make
Yeah.
sure you can get components and get things replaced or repaired. Or the other part of it is perhaps the system is a good system and it still has parts available and that sort of thing. But the people who installed that particular system were no longer in your marketplace. And some of these things are very complex. And so it's very important to get really good records from your seller and find out who's their who their contractors are, who they do business with, service providers, because they can be your best asset especially during the transition time. But you want to know during the home inspection, does everything in the system work? And again, that's really beyond the scope of your general home inspector.
Yeah,
I've
you
got
bet.
I've got a question for you, Tammy, and I've only
Sure.
done this a couple of times, but I have a feeling it might be more common there. What about have you had any homes that have built-in saltwater aquariums? Is that something you see at all?
It does happen, and of course, it would only happen in much more expensive homes. And there again, you're going to have to call someone who installs and services those systems to come and evaluate. But super, super important to do so because they can cause massive damage if anything is not in working order. Right? You're talking about big things, and it makes me bring up the point also that there's a lot of condominiums, luxury condominiums here that do not allow aquariums, whether built in or not,
Oh, well,
because of the risk
yeah.
to the actual building and the others. But they would definitely have to rely on the vendor that did the installation and the service.
Well, one of the things that we didn't talk about, at least before the podcast, that just comes to mind. One of the things I've had several clients inspect is doing structural inspections for weight, and that and
Mm.
talking about aquariums made me think about that. So, for example, you've got a client who wants to have private training. They want to have a gym in their home. They're used to always having a private gym in their home, and they're looking for space in this new home they're purchasing, whether it's new construction or existing. And you can't just go put gym equipment on a second or third floor of a building without evaluating the structure will it support it. Some of these folks have very extensive gyms, home gyms, and you need to make sure that the flooring system is designed to accommodate the weight. So I had folks do that before too, that sort of inspection.
Sure, sure.